Hi, good morning. How are you all doing? Um, I'm okay. I've been awake since, well, I haven't had a very good night's sleep again. I've got another upset stomach, so um, such is life. And of course, then I'm awake early because it's Wednesday and April and coal. And I did go back to sleep. It's now, gosh, it's nearly 10 to 9 in the morning. It's a lovely cool breeze coming in. It's a bit cloudy. We are forecast thunderstorms later on today, tonight, and for the next couple of days, and heavy warnings of heavy rain. So that'll help to freshen the air up, I hope. But yeah, so my stomach's feeling a bit tender, and I'm not feeling all that wonderful today. But I'll see how it goes. If the worst comes to the worst, I'll just end up napping for the day, which is fine by me. Though I do have to go out and run an errand at some point in time, so. But I just wanted to do some art first because I'm hoping that giving my stomach time to digest a very light breakfast and to have some drink will help. What I've got here is a piece of art that I started sometime yesterday, and I carried on working on it when I'd woken up this morning, having something to drink before I could settle back down to sleep. I'm just using an 03 micron pen, and this really is just drawing, not micron pen, what am I talking about, unipin pen. I'm just drawing for pleasure and for something that's a bit of a change around from what I've been doing lately, something that's a bit entangled, or more entangled, more what people usually expect from me or are used to seeing from me. And it really is a kind of comfort art, I suppose, and I'm fine with comfort art. There are times when it's necessary, and today is one of those days where I think it's going to be necessary. I did manage to get 3 templates sorted for the book I'm working on, so that makes now a total of 13. I've still got to edit 2 of them and ink the other one in, but you know that process doesn't take too long, to be honest. So hopefully I'll find focus and energy and feeling a bit better in myself later on today to carry on. If not, I know not to push it when I'm unwell, because I can very easily get dissatisfied with what I'm doing, and I think that's a tendency we all have, is to push ourselves thinking we need to be productive. Well, I'm going to be productive today by looking after myself, and sometimes that is enough. I think there's a big emphasis on productivity in today's life, with people always wanting to fill their days up with activity and things to do, but not factoring in that time that's needed just to be productive in a different kind of way. Giving oneself a chance to heal if we're not feeling very well, whether that's physically, like I feel today, emotionally or mentally, and sometimes I suppose spiritually. There's a time for people to rest and sit back and reflect on things in, I don't know, a spiritual or philosophical manner, perhaps. Just take that time. And no, it may not be producing anything that perhaps has concrete values in terms of a clean house or that list of to-do things to be done, getting ticked off, or spending hours and hours at work, or whatever it may be. But it's still productive, I suppose, in a way that is about taking care of yourself, taking care of your health. And that is also something that is very, very important. So it's a hard lesson to learn when we're brought up in a world that the messages from all around us are, you have to be busy, 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 on the go all the time, doing this, 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 this. And really, I just find the whole idea nowadays just exhausting to think about. I mentioned this before, but when I was working as a teacher, I really was. I became a kind of workaholic, I suppose, for a long time, until other interests came into my life. I'd not just work at school, but I'd be working until late into the evening at home and at the weekends, preparing work, marking work, sorting things out, redoing things. When the computers came along, it would be, the development of PowerPoint and things, rejigging PowerPoints for the needs of a particular class, and new things I'd learnt, or new ideas I'd had from workshops that I'd been to, training courses and so on. And it was a constant wheel of just being busy. And looking back, I'm not entirely sure who benefited from it. I don't know whether my pupils did. I know they most probably didn't benefit from me being exhausted and burning out, which led me to leaving teaching. But what it had made me do is that I had to learn for a number of years before I had that big burnout to try to have time for myself, because I'd feel guilty if I did. And yet I knew I needed it, and yet I'd feel guilty, so I'd push myself and push myself and push myself. And it just wasn't good. And the end result really wasn't very pretty, really. So, from my point of view, from my perspective, how I was affected by all of this and the pressure within teaching as well. The workloads increased hugely from the time I started to the time I finished, in terms of what was expected to be done each and every week for each and every class. And it had to be weekly books marked. Well, when I had about eight different classes, but I was teaching them for 4-5 lessons a week. That's an awful lot of work. And I'd be constantly monitoring what they were doing in the class during the lesson, giving them feedback, helping them to complete the work, understand it. And I would make little comments on the pages, or there'd be evidence that I'd helped them, because there'd be drawings or writing there, things to show this. And yet that wasn't deemed good enough, that there almost had to be an essay written there of how they could improve their work. I'd already done that. But the pressure was so much that I would be there until 5:30, 6 o'clock most nights in school, working. And when I was having counselling, first big time, my counsellor encouraged me not to take work home with me, which was a good advice, because I would by then take work home with me, and in the morning or at the end of the weekend it would still be sat there because I was too exhausted to do anything with it. And then I'd be hard on myself and feel a failure for not having done the work. So there were a lot of very, very hard lessons for me to learn in all of this. And excuse me a moment. So I'm thinking about what I'm doing here just for a little moment. it's taken me a long time, many years, to recover from the damage that I did to myself. Through being, I suppose, a workaholic, because it got to extremes while I was teaching, where the message I was getting from all around is, if you don't do this, you're not good enough. If you don't work like this, you're not good enough, or you're a failure. And that was in spite of the evidence to the contrary. And when people were mentioned and praised for being there for so long in the evening, working to get this done and to get that done, and the pressure piles up, and I'm one who can, because I naturally have this thing that I'm a failure. It's and imposter syndrome can rear its ugly head from time to time. It really took its toll on me, living in that kind of culture, existing in that culture. And the negative feedback really didn't help my emotional and mental health in any way, shape or form. So the messages were just reinforcing that poor view I had of myself and making me wake up at night or stay awake at night, worrying how I was a failure, how I could do to improve. And in the end, as I said, it took its toll, because I ended up having to take a lot of time off work, and in the end leave the profession, which led me to, I was fortunate enough that I'd already had I'm going to do this one, I know. Had the opportunity to do some work as a colouring book illustrator, and so I saw that as an opportunity to make a living of it, which is what I do now. And every now and again I put a lot of pressure on myself to think, I need to do this, do that, and I go, Angela, in your own time, because I know what the results can be if I push myself too hard nowadays, or I put too much pressure on myself. Learning to pace myself and taking that time out, like this morning now, to create things just for myself without feeling guilty about doing it. Just for the simple joy and pleasure of being able to do this, to give myself the time and space to reflect on things. It's not been an easy lesson to learn, for sure. But some days I am better at it than others. I mean, the closer a deadline gets, the more guilty I feel about taking these little indulgences. But at the same time, I also know if I don't, when that pressure builds up, there'll come a point when I exhaust myself emotionally, which leads to a physical exhaustion, and all I do is sleep and I can't focus and so on. So it's important. And the goals I set, in inverted commas, is that at the moment I'm aiming on days when I can work for 2 templates to be drawn, and that's doable. And once they're done, I can then choose to continue if I'm struck by inspiration, or I know what I need to do next, or I can say, right, it's time to break. It's time to take a break for now and do something else, and then come back to it. Yesterday there was no way I was going to be able to spend time editing the templates I'd drawn, because I was beginning to start to feel unwell, and it's only now looking back I can see that. So today hopefully I'll find the oomph to do that. If not, they're scanned in, they're ready to go, and I know it's not going to take me too long. I'm done with this, as in finished the drawing, but I've already selected some colours to use for this. And I thought I'd like to use the olive green and deep green with some these pale greys, pale dawn grey and green grey. These are the Zig Clean Colour brush pens. Ochre I thought would be nice as a yellow rather than a bright yellow to go with these. Though I have got some bright yellow in there because I suspect I might want some of those. And then for flowery colours, a lot of the reds and pinks and peaches and so on in these pens are very, very bright. But I found these ones, I like pale rose. It's got more of a dusky value to it. The lilac is purplish when you put it down and it fades to this nice pink colour. So a small amount of that faded out would be lovely. And the English lavender is really nice as well because it is lavender, but again, use water to fade it out. It will look lovely. It goes pinky and there's hints of purple around it. So I know that these pens and water aren't affected by what's my brush? I want a slightly bigger brush today because some of these areas are a bit bigger. So I need just that. And I just thought it would be something nice to do. I have to decide about how I do the background at some point. So I'm not sure how I'll approach that. It may be that I scan it in digitally and add a digital background to it, because I'm really not very good with traditional media at doing backgrounds. So I prefer to work on coloured paper, I'm afraid. Background instant, yay! I just thought it'd be quite nice to add some colour over this quite detailed drawing in places, just to bring things out a bit. And whether I add colour to all of these, I don't know yet. All of the elements. Let's see how it goes, because it might be that I just put it on some focal points and then the rest is done in sort of like a whole weird wash or pattern of colours maybe. Said these pens are a dream to work with on this paper. This is the Canson Imagine mixed media paper again, and they do work nicely on this paper. Watercolours wouldn't, so I'm not even thinking about getting my watercolour paints out to do this. I know that I need to use, you know, watercolour paper really for them. But it's, I think I'm going to end up with a drawing here that's a bit woodcut, or not quite lino cut because the lines aren't quite as thick, but woodcut or etched. And that feeling of those hand-coloured illustrations that you'd get in, I suppose, Victorian books, where there's a lot of lines and then just simple colours over the top. And there is something lovely about just that simplicity of colour. I was flicking through some art books that I've got on my Kindle, and I can't remember which one it was, but saying about palettes from different sources. It was about colour and colour palettes and so on. And they had picked out lots of sources of inspiration for colour. I'm wittering now. I'm losing my mind a moment. So let me just regather my thoughts here. So lots of suggestions for inspirations for colour palettes, and looking at them to see how the colours are used. And one of them was some William Morris prints. And of course, William Morris was one of the main movers and shakers in the arts and crafts movement in the late 1800s. Most gorgeous fabrics and wallpaper, really, really ornate. And I'd never really noticed before, even though I've looked at his work often, because I really do like the arts and crafts movements, which led to, I suppose, Art Nouveau, and eventually there was Art Deco, which was quite different. It was more mechanical, more geometric and structural. But anyway, I'm pointing out how, in his designs, how colours were really used in quite a simple way. So, for example, if you had, I don't know, flower bud, you'd have the main, like a dark colour and a light version of the same colour. So a simple shape with a pattern within, in say the outside shape, the dark colour, the inner pattern or motif in the lighter colour. Same for leaves. You know, dark base, light patterns, or vice versa, because, you know, either would work. And just a really simple palette of just a small number of colours for the whole design. And that was so, you know, lovely to have somebody to point out the bleeding obvious to me, because I can be incredibly dense about things, and I will be the first one to tell you I can be incredibly dense about things. But I quite like that idea, so I suspect it might be something I'll explore working with watercolours at a later point, is that idea of having, oh, that was the wrong size brush. Needs a smaller area, smaller brush, Angela. It's important. Now, come on, girl. Have a look at that and see how it works, you know, deconstructing some of his work and seeing how I could make it work for myself. We're talking here about, you know, sort of like invisible line colouring, you know, as it were, using colours without this black line. But then, I've already said, I do rather like black line work with colour. And it's like this because it ends up looking very much like lino prints or etchings or whatever, hand-coloured ones. And there's a beautiful simplicity in them, I think. Okie dokes, I know I'm sure I've got another seed pot somewhere. Could have sworn I'd drawn another one. Perhaps not. I'm sure I did. I seem to remember drawing at least one more. Oh, perhaps not. Doesn't matter. If it turns up, I'll know what I'm doing anyway. So yeah, but no pressure on me from me as to what time scale I give myself to work on these things. I'll just see how it goes. One thing I keep saying I need to do more is to keep notes of these things where I can refer to them, because my memory isn't always as good as it used to be. Oh, sorry, tissue getting blown around by this lovely breeze coming in. Yesterday evening I was so cold I even had fleecies on, and everybody else went to a thing online, a meditation meeting online, and everybody else was there in some really tops and things, and I was there bundled up in my fleecy. That should have been an indication to me almost instantly, Angela, you are not feeling well. Angela went, I'm just cold, I'm tired. And I was tired, but there was more to it than that. Said I can be incredibly dense when it comes to me. No, I'm fine. I'm not recognising the bleeding obvious. An interesting colour. This is the green grey. And it is grey, but there is that little hint of green, and I just thought it'd be quite nice. Oh, there's the other one here. Look. I knew there was another one. Couldn't see it for looking, I think is the phrase I'd use here. Okay, let's have a look. Deal with those bits first. That's a bit wet. So I'm trying to leave most of the, a lot of colour at the base of these areas to give that sense of shadow and lightness, shadow and light with this, and to sense of volume or dimension in some way. Okay, where's the ochre? There's the ochre. So ochre seeds in one, ochre in the other, and I am going to pop a little bit of ochre in these bands as well, just to bring, using this philosophy, I suppose, of William Morris's, no more than 2 colours in a design, preferably shades of the same one, but that ain't going to happen here because I'm working with these pens, I suppose. Although I do have, I could use a light green and a dark green. I've got Dawn Grey here somewhere, which is a much paler grey than this one, but I think I'll get the same kind of effect by pulling the colours out, just that little bit. Now I've got choices here because with the wash, this ochre has spread out evenly because they're quite small areas. So I could go back, and I may just do that with these here. Just add a little bit of the colour in the darker areas. If it's damp, it may still spread out. If it's dry, it's unlikely to. But with a very, 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 very barely damp brush, I should be able to just move that a little bit just to get rid of the harsh edges. Checking the size of the brush. So I'm using tissue just to take most of the water off here, and then just want to soften the edges of those darker areas just a little bit. There we go. So interesting colours I'm going to be using here. You can tell that already, can't you? But it's a nice way for me to start the day and to find my sense of balance and to come around and feel a bit better, see if my strawberries, and I did have a naughty Danish today, kick in and I'll feel better. Or at least have a bit more oomph and energy, put it that way. So some green here, but it's that I'm heading back towards some vintagey tones here, and I'm thinking I may need to dig out some browns to use. I've got small number, I've got a selection of colours here I can use, but we'll see. This dark green. I have to let these dry so I can go back with that dark green and add a bit of darkness in there, as if that leaf is sort of like folding up a bit. Let's see now how it goes. And I quite like dark green around these. Keeping the white of the paper showing through in places as little highlights. See, I can always come back with something like a gel pen to add the highlights to places, because I quite like that. So I quite like adding little white dots to add a bit of sparkle and interest. Okay, yeah, these will need some dark. Yeah. If the paper was too wet when I added this, it would just spread, I think. Although this not being watercolour paper, not being watercolour paper, because not watercolour paper is cold pressed, if I remember rightly. This isn't watercolour paper. Colours tend not to react and spread with water in quite the same way. But I'm quite pleased with the way this paper stands up to adding further wet layers. It doesn't pill easily, break up and become woolly almost. It's quite nice. Of course, I've always got options here later on, because I could use coloured pencils or Inktense if I want to really intensify the colour there. But I'm just going to see how it looks when I've got this all done. So that works quite nicely, actually. Have a look here. It's these kinds of seed-heady, bed-headed, weird things, which I think in the Zentangle world they call this kind of shape. It's a kind of a muka, I think. Oh, this is okay. Let's get some other greens in here. I'm going to alternate these bits, because that way there's a bit of patterning and a bit of interest there as well. That'll be all right. And then let's do the other one. Well, there's more than these two, but I'll just work you now. And I'm not too worried if I overspill into those little circles, because I can always lift the colour out with a damp brush. But then as I'm going to add colour to them, not leave them white. It's not really all that important, because the colours will mix, and there's only a tiny bit in these. Right, okay, let's do this. Little bits there. That'll be fine. And then here. Okay. I'm also really glad I've put my colour palette on the back and named these, because there's no way I'm going to do this all today, film it all, that's for sure. I will be coming to a halt in proceedings fairly soon, I think. Oh gosh, look at that. Oh dear, I missed two next to each other, but it doesn't matter. We just have two the same, the bigger section of this olive green. Like that, that works then. Okay, and I'm going to take, I think I'm going to take ochre and put some ochre up these sections here. I could leave them white, except I've put a border, a boundary there. and that means I need to fill it up with colour. So I think ochre would look quite nice there. There we go. So we've got those. All right, next, once I've got the ochre out, we do the centre of this flower. And I suspect all of this is going to be done in ochre. Because the bright yellow is lovely, but it is a bit bright to be used sparingly, I think. Okie dokes. Now then, that ring around it, I think I'm going to do in ochre as well. I'm going to add some darker ochre in just to keep that feeling of dimension going. I'm going to be careful with this, that I only use this little bit of it to, the water's decided to do what it wants to do. So we just need to add a little bit more here, which is fine, because while it's damp, the damp edges will spread out. Okay, now this is a bit close to the pink, so I want to use a different colour, and my choices were English lavender, lilac. I think I might go with the lilac for this one, but I'm also aware that I can mix colours if I need to, so let me just go around and put a little bit of lilac on the top of each of these petals, and then I decide about those smaller bits in between, whether I'm going to turn them into sort of leafy things, I suppose, like sepals, or whether I'm going to create them as other kinds of petals. That really does go quite pinky, doesn't it, with the water as it spreads out, but it's quite nice as well because it's this very soft, gently colour. I think the purple in it just helps a bit, although it's looking a bit garish in places, but it is what it is. I have chosen, and so it is. It's not too bad. Just thinking that I might, because I can, add just a hint of pale rose here, so I get a slightly different shade of pink, because that is looking just a bit on the bright side of lavender. I'm looking for something that's a bit more on the vintagey side of colours. But this may work quite nicely to my advantage, and I think it does. It's still a pinky colour, but it's not the same as the other flower, because these are different flowers, different shapes, different patterns. So that's a bit better. It's a bit less in your face. And I think I will make those. Shall I, shan't I? Yeah, let's use use some pale dawn grey. So this is a greeny grey. I've got no idea why it's called pale dawn, but it is. So you go with the names on the things. They've got numbers on them. Numbers, give me a name anytime. So that'll do for now. I can come back and either add more colour. It is more grey than these seed pods, but yeah. So I think I'll finish here for today, and I'll just say thank you for joining me, listening to me witter. I hope you've enjoyed seeing some drawing and some colour adding. Let me know if you approve of the colours or not. Not that it'll make any difference because I've chosen my palette, but it's always nice to know if people like them. Having said that, I've said I might add some browns here and there, because I think that just the very limited colours might not be there. I'm not so fussed on that green grey, but that can be fixed because I can always add green on the top and I'll get a different shade of green. But thanks for joining me. If you're back, you're most welcome to return. If you're here for the first time and you've got all the way through to the end, please consider liking and subscribing. And I'll see you again tomorrow, most probably. Take care now. Bye-bye.